Just okay. All right.
Oh, hang on a second. Why is this?
I know it's
Oh, hang on. I know what I'm doing. I think I know what I'm doing wrong.
glad you got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there we go.
Thank
I
you.
think that's the one. Yes. Okay, let me see if I can get it into full screen. Can you see my screen? Okay, everybody. Yeah.
Yes.
I wonder if I can put it in full
Yes.
view.
Yeah.
Hang on.
You can feel. I think you can. Yeah. Very good.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Can you see it? Can everybody see that now?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, welcome. Thanks for the welcome, and thanks for the honor of sharing my time with you. And it's a pleasure to connect with Dr. Yuyer again. What do I say? For me, although I'm doing this, part of what I do is kind of twofold. It's sharing with you some knowledge, but also it's part of helping you actually draw already on the knowledge you have. So you're not entirely tabula rasa, as the saying goes, but so hopefully I will generate some thinking and some mental activity in your minds to help you kind of relate to some of the stuff you know already. So there's kind of a twofold bit. I am both a tap and a reservoir, so to speak. Well, I'd put in something like that. So given the introduction, we're probably about 10 minutes late, but we'll catch up. So that was the plan, which Dr. Ayi has already agreed. I think because it's a long time, I've built in a bit of a 5-minute break for us to kind of just stand up, get a drink, and stretch our legs before we carry on again. I hope that's okay. I wanted to share this with you because there's a story to this. I did some work with a group of business owners via the Nottingham Trent University. And one morning I was walking out of my front door and there was this guy knocked at the door and handed me these flowers. And I thought, I've not ordered any flowers. And then I thought, what's my family going to think about? I've probably got some secret lover somewhere whom they don't know about. So I just I'll include this too. For me, this was just a group of people who I spent some time with, shared some experience with in terms of personal growth, and this was their appreciation and gratitude. So I'll include this to you in terms of actually kind of to symbolize the gratitude that Dr. Adi has already given to me, but also to share this with you, just as a how we need to be reminded of being grateful in little ways. And don't you underestimate sometimes the impact you have on other people's lives, even when you don't know. And this bunch of flowers just reminded me of that. So I thought I'd just share with you in terms of sharing that gratitude, always to be grateful. Okay, well, Dr. Yu has done most of the stuff, so I'll skip through this. Well, that's me. Husband, dad, granddad. I'm the CEO of Emara Development Programs. I'm a public speaker, certified coach. I've worked in health and social care now for about 42 years. 7 or 8 of these have been in the healthcare service, and 35 of these has been in social care, mainly local government. And then about 15, 16 years ago, I decided I was not going to work for the government anymore. So I went independent as a social worker. I'm still a registered social worker. I still roll up my sleeves and manage teams and teach and train and lead teams. I previously worked as a chief executive digital leads. I've been a civil servant, like Dr. Adia said, but I've also done some lecturing at social work in the social work degree at Leeds Metropolitan, which is Leeds Beckett now. Did some work with the medical students at University of Leeds. Formerly a teacher, formerly a development worker, and everybody always says, I didn't know that. I actually was training to be a Catholic priest for about 11 years. So there you go. That's my story. But can I just say, I don't share this with you to impress you. These are just roles that I have fulfilled. I am Joe, and it is the people, it's the communities that I identify with that make me who I am. So these are just roles I've fulfilled. Hopefully, I've been privileged with the skills to share and impact other people's lives through these roles. But these roles don't define me. Just like as we go along, you'll see that actually nothing should define you other than who you are, the person of integrity and uniqueness and lovable and loving and valuable. So that's just me in brief. I thought I'd just put that one there. I'm basically a big kid at heart, really. I like laughing at myself because I think that's part and parcel of sustaining my own mental well-being. So I'm quite happy to laugh at myself. So today, we are going to explore kind of things about the role and relevance and impact of culture in mental health practice, both for individuals and communities, but also think about cross-cultural approaches, how we can incorporate this into our mental health practice. We'll look very briefly at the definition and brief consideration of what culture is. And also, I think it's really important kind of to look at mental health and mental illness. I'll touch on that very briefly. And then there's issues around cultural concepts and meanings that actually kind of find their way into mental health and mental health experience, because it's really important that let me see if I can minimize this. Oh no, that takes me off the screen completely. Oh, what happened then? Uh-oh. I haven't got a clue what has happened.
Prof, we can see your.
You can see me, but I can't see my screen.
Or you can just remove it and restart it.
No, so I clicked on something. Participants.
Sheila, can you mute?
Sorry?
Oh no, one of our classmates.
What did I do here? I haven't got a clue what I've done. I think I've just realigned the screen.
I was suggesting, Prof, you can. Do you want it to? We can.
I can
stop.
No, I'll stop sharing, then come back again. Okay. Stop sharing. I should know. I'm on Zoom most of my life every day, but for some reason. Okay, let's share again. There we go. But for some reason you can't see me now. That's the
now visible.
Yeah, you can't see my face.
It's
yes,
fine.
We can see you.
But I can't see myself.
No
well,
worries.
never mind. So long as you can see me, that's okay. Can everybody see me? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. Let's carry on.
Continue. You don't have to. We are seeing you, so it's okay.
Okay, super. So we'll look at some definitions and issues to do with mental health and stuff. It's gone again. I'm not quite sure why this is doing this. Ah, there we go. Good. So no, it's not allowing me to move. That's interesting. It's not allowing me to do the screen. Ah, here we go. Sorry. Okay, so good. So we look at that and some concepts and the kind of meanings we attach into people's experience of mental well-being and illness and wellness. So, and then we'll look at that kind of how mental health manifests and presents itself in different cultural backgrounds and settings, the impact on people's life and well-being, and also share with you some cross-cultural or multicultural understandings within mental health implications for practice. And also we look at something about capability and competence, being able to practice with culture and people's different experiences in mind. I just wanted to say that actually there is no health without mental health. This was actually our motto for our mental health strategy for about 10 years ago. It was very much about approaching mental health from a wholesome point of view. And I really like that. I really like this phrase here, because everything we do every single day is about our mental health. Believe it or not, it is. And it's really important that we are aware of that, that mental health and mental well-being is at the very core of every single day of our lives. So I want to start by asking, so what is mental health? I like keeping things really simple. Mental health is really about the health of our mind. And the secret is in the title. It's mental. And mental comes from the Latin mens, which stands for mind, not brain, because brain in Latin is cerebrum. And this is really important because the wellness of our mind is not the brain, the organ. The brain is an organ. We see it, we can touch it. There's lots of them in laboratories, but I don't know about you, but I don't know anybody who has ever seen the mind. I just let you take that think. And yet, this 5-letter power controls our life every single moment of each day. I'm talking now with my mouth, but my mind controls the eyes, it controls my gestures, it controls my movement, it controls my digestion, and I'm not even aware of that, but it's doing that. But at the same time, every so often there is ideas floating in my mind, even if I'm talking to you, as I'm sure you are. So it's really important to understand that actually this is why I think we need to understand that actually when we are working in mental health, we are talking about the health and well-being of people's minds, because mental health is about what is happening in this thing we call mind. So it's about our all-round well-being, which is both emotional, physical, and psychological. And yet, I'm going to commit heresy now. And yet, our training in mental health is about illness rather than health. Isn't that interesting? The whole focus of the training we have in terms of mental health training, in terms of understanding how our mental illness affects people, is very much around focusing on illness and non-well-being. Is it a surprise then that actually when we approach people, already we are beginning to look at symptoms and so on, and we forget that actually there's human beings there, but I'll come to that a bit later. I just wanted to make that distinction. So in very simplistic terms, mental health is about the health of our minds, and our mind controls and affects literally everything we do, as we will see shortly. I wanted to start with this. If we are going to talk about mental health, I think we need to understand that we are three-dimensional beings. It's really important. We are a mind, we are a body, and we are a soul. Now, I don't mean soul here in the religious sense, but I mean soul in that I think we call it the CNS. We are talking about that unseen life within us that controls everything. I think the Chinese or Japanese call it the yin and the yang. So, and our mental health has kind of covered these three dimensionals. Very often we think of ourselves in two dimensions, physical body and our mind, or our brain sometimes, as we confuse it. But we forget about the soul. This is kind of the unseen power that makes us who we are. It's the thing that actually connects us with the source of life. It's the thing that actually helps us function every single day. And therefore, mental health is about the equilibrium between these three components of ourselves. And if you move one of these, it affects every other bit. So if our mind is not well, is out of sync, it's going to affect our body, it's going to affect our soul. If our soul is unwell, it's going to affect our body, it's going to affect our mind, and vice versa. And mental well-being is about equilibrium in these three. And I think that's really important to understand or to appreciate, because unless we appreciate this, then our mental health practice becomes two-dimensional, and very often we don't take on some of the non-visible presentations, non-audible presentations. The thing we talk about we experience, we feel, but we can't put in words. Yet, for me, I think that's where mental health and mental well-being rests. And when people are not healthy, it is that bit that we have got to connect with the individual to begin the healing process. So I thought I'll just share with you that actually I think it's really important to understand this dimension, that actually we are three-dimensional beings, and our mental health is about equilibrium. Think of when you have sprained a leg. You know, it affects your emotions. It affects your body, you feel the pain, but actually the rest of you doesn't feel quite right. If you know, you have got malaria or something, your body is affected, it affects the way your emotions function. It affects how you feel within yourself. That's the connection I'm talking about. It's all about mental. That's what I meant by there's no health without mental health. And some of the determinants of mental health are both socio-philosophical, they are anthropological, relational. It is about power and political or professional, geopolitics. You just have to think of what's happening now. God knows what's happening in all these conflict areas. It's scientific, and it even touches things like fashion. Just think about it. What is fashion about? Fashion is about people putting on a dress or a pair of trousers or a piece of clothing or a piece of gear and feeling good about themselves. It is somebody going into their hair salon and having a haircut or having their hair done and coming out feeling good about themselves. That's all about mental health. Just think of yourself. This is why I like the camera, because I like to be able to be talking to you. Think of the last time you went to a salon or to a barber's. I can guarantee you, every time I've observed people in this when we run improving access psychological therapies, I've seen people come out of a hair salon and their shoulders are high, their chest is out, their head is straight because they feel good. That's what mental health is all about. And because their soul is feeling good, it shows in their body, it shows in their face, and they have got, if I may use the word, an easy mind. There is no trouble because they feel good at that particular moment in time. Just think of yourself. That's what you feel. And you know, when people say to you, oh, your hair looks good, you say, yeah, I've just come out of the salon. That's what I meant by the three-dimensional being. So mental health touches on everything. Environment. We are products of our environment. It shapes us. And why do I raise this? Because through the environment, we have got both modeling and proximity. It allows us a learning platform. It allows, if I may use that word, it allows us a space to check out, to learn from, to copy. And this we copy in terms of actually, how do I know that somebody is not feeling well? How do I know, how do I have access to the person who understands how this happens? And our environment shapes us. This is why also in mental health practice, the environment within which we practice is absolutely critical, whether that's a clinical room or when people come to see you or the hospital they are in, that environment is critical for people's recovery. Why? Because the environment shapes us. They're all products of the environment. And I'm going to share with you very, very, very quickly so I'm talking about both physical environment and emotional environment. So it's both. You feel good if you're working in a place that is light and you know the windows are open, you can see outside. Somehow it help you to concentrate. Try and work when you're all squeezed in a closed room with no windows. The experience is completely different. That's what I meant by environment. So, but also think about the emotional environment we create when we are involved in clinical practice. My environment, it's about my mom. She was my role model. The environment she brought me up in, where I grew in, what I saw her, I modeled her. Actually, she actually almost unknowingly, it is actually my mom who introduced it to mental health without knowing about it at all until I came to know about it years later. Yet she created an environment as a single mom where we still thrived in the absence of a dad. We still thrived and had a sense of identity and belonging to our community. She created that environment. We learned, we modeled from her generosity, we modeled resilience, we modeled how you shared knowledge and how you appreciate other people. That was my environment. The other environment was partly my absent dad, and that environment taught me of the person I do not want to be. So there's nothing, things happen, things does not happen to us, they happen for us as well. So that's the kind of environment that my dad brought along, which taught me, forced me to model good things and not model bad things and how you hurt people and so on. So that's my environment. That for me is not an environment. I'm the handsome one. I think in this case, it will be on your right or left. I can't see because I can't see myself. I think it will be on your right. What happened on this day is very briefly, I'll probably come back to it later again. It was a Saturday morning, about 11 o'clock in the morning. I just turned 13. And I'd been thrown out of St. Mary's Osocho, which was my boarding school. And a week before, without knowing, Dad had left the family without not letting everybody know. And the day before this picture, which was taken by my childhood friend Patrick, we had gone to bed hungry. I didn't have any food. My mom could not feed us the night before, so I was hungry. So we and on Saturdays, me and my friend Grad was here. We had gone to Kissy Town Parish, cut the grass. And as we were waiting here, we were waiting to be paid. It was about, I can't remember, we're talking about 1970 here. So this is about, I don't know, 10 shillings, 5 shillings, which in today's money will probably be something like 150 shillings or thereabouts. And here was me playing the role of provider, and all that money was going to go to my mom to feed us. But something happened on this day, and I used this photo for something else. Something happened on this day which said to me, this is never going to happen to me again, nor is it going to happen to my mom again. And therefore, I don't want this to happen to anybody that I know, that I love, that I've got a relationship ever again. And I learned that by mirroring my mom and modeling my mom. But something in me happened on that day that was to drive me for the rest of my life. But it drove me sometimes in good ways, and sometimes it drove me in bad ways. Sometimes I overworked, I overdid things. I grew up too quickly. I kind of, from about 13, I didn't have the chance to be a proper child and a teenager and so on. And I'll come back to that. But all that is about how the environment shaped me in terms of my emotions, in terms of my reactions and my responses. And obviously, being distressed and hungry has an impact on my mental well-being. And I wasn't feeling very happy that morning. I was angry, I was frightened, I was cynical, I was everything negative you can think about. So suddenly my mind was in a good place. You relate to your partner, and part and parcel of your environment is the environment you create in your relationship. My kids have always been my best teachers, believe it or not. And that environment helps me to be who I am. And that environment helps me learn and support and grow with them and create a relationship with them. That's the kind of environment within which our mental health either blossoms or is affected. And this happens every single day in our families. The level and degree of contact we have with our children, the little time we make for our children, can be the determinant about their mental well-being or not. That's my granddaughter. I call her my intrepid teacher. She also teaches me something else. It's about she forces me to be a good student so I can be a good teacher to her. What does that mean in terms of clinical practice, you might ask? Well, actually, as a practitioner, your starting point should be the individual in front of you. You need to hear what they are not saying. You need to see what they are not demonstrating. You need to feel what they are not transmitting emotionally. And Leila, my granddaughter, helps me do this. She asks me very difficult questions, which force me to go within. But in the process of that relationship, I am fully present to her. And as clinicians, that is one of the biggest skills you need to develop. It's about genuinely being present to the person in front of you. Because if you're not, you're probably going to miss 95% of the information you need. That's why I've shared this with you. So the environment is really important. Now, I've put my granddad at the very end because I am who I am today, and I get emotional when I talk about my granddad. I am who I am today because of him. He's kind of the person who wrapped everything together for me. And I don't know where I would be today, where my life would have headed be if it wasn't for him. And it's because of him that I became a good person. It's because of him I became a supportive partner. It's because of him, because of what I modeled and learned from him. It's because of the environment he created for me that actually helped me to have a healthy mind, helped me to learn how to be resilient, helped me to be in touch with my emotions. It was basically my he was my semi-dad and coach and mentor, therapist, teacher, but more importantly, he was my friend. And this is important when it comes to our mental health because our inner circle becomes important. And part of our healing process is that relational concept about mental health, which I talked about in the determinants, the slide before. So for me, my granddad kind of wrapped up everything that I am today. The knowledge I have today, the way I transmit that knowledge, the way I share and help and assist and support other people, I learned from my granddad because of the environment he created around me. And this for me becomes really, really important because I am a granddad now. And I feel responsible that in my relationship with my granddaughter, I need to create an environment whereby she feels accepted, she feels loved, she feels free to make mistakes, because that's how I sustain her mental well-being. And I gave her that promise when I was born. I'll be the best granddad I can be, just like my granddad was to me. That's why I'm emphasizing this bit about environment. So think about your environment at home, at work, I don't know, whatever you are, and in terms of actually how does your environment support your mental well-being? And then think of actually how might that affect the way you interact with somebody coming to you because their mental well-being their mental health is not in a very good place. And it's not an accident that actually earlier on in psychiatry, you had to take a social history as part of the diagnosis process. You really had to go to town in terms of relationships, work, things that have gone wrong, whatever, exercise and hobbies and so on. It was all part and parcel trying to understand the individual. That's why I've labored on the environment a lot. I'll come back to it when we come to self-care. And all this affects how we think, how we behave, and how we act when we are both well and when we are unwell. And when we are unwell, depending on how serious it is, it will affect our thoughts. It will then impact on our behavior and then impact on how we act. Therefore, I talked about how then culturally we manifest our distress through our thinking, through our behavior, and through our actions. So really, really important about the environment. Okay, so what is culture? I'm just gonna, it's culture is, is both macro and micro. So the macro bit is about all the institutional and beliefs and actions and traditional practices, the folklore, the stories, all our parents tell us about the elephant and the hare and the tortoise and all that, the food we eat, the wisdom we share, the literature, the music, the ways we relate to each other, the meanings we give to experiences and people, the meanings we give to situations, how we engage with the people in the community. That's all culture. It also includes the way we think, like I said before, the way we communicate. Think of these days, when I was a teenager, I was a young man, when somebody asked you habari, we used to say shwari, which meant everything is peaceful and calm. And now if you ask somebody habari, they say poa. There in that little differentiation is how, and poa, which is only 3 letters, tells you this person is well, all is well. Just in 3 words, all is well. That's part of our culture. That's the way how we communicate, and words have meanings, and actions have meanings, and our values in our institutions, racial or religious or otherwise. So that's kind of the macro bit about culture and so on. This was there was an international mental health kind of based on, we're looking at the impact of culture. It kind of reflects what I've already said. So culture is about the whole complex of distinctive, both spiritual, material, intellectual, emotional characteristics and social groups, arts, folklore, like I said before. Basically, it's mirroring in different words what I said before. It's all that. That's what somebody who is mentally unwell is bringing to their interaction with you. And it's really important that we remain open to that and expose ourselves to that and be present to that, because they come as a whole human being. So that's kind of the macro bit of culture. The micro, I don't want to have it this. The micro bit about culture is, we might talk about the Gen Z culture. We talk about the matatu culture. Think about it. We talk about the music scene or the music culture. We may talk about the business culture. Those are microcultures which force us to relate and engage and pick up a language that is different or can be the same, but with different meanings from the macro culture. And all the bits of just the microculture also does impact our mental well-being. So the kind of music we listen to, the kind of news that we watch, the political climate, that's another thing, political culture as a microculture, all those things contribute to our mental well-being. So think about, think of your experience at the matatu at 3 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, or 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon when you're traveling across Nairobi. Think of what you experience. Am I wrong in assuming everybody's from Nairobi? Because I think, Dr. you said people were from different countries. Hello? Hello?
Yes, Doc, you're right. Some of us are from different countries.
So just think of, roughly, is that somebody from Ghana, somebody from Central Africa, and where else? Hello?
From Cameroon.
Cameroon. So there's people from
Yeah.
West Africa, people from East Africa, anybody from North Africa and South Africa? Are you there?
We have one from Zimbabwe. Nomalanga,
Okay.
you can
Okay. So I think we share something the same as Kenya. There's 2 types of transport. There's the coaches, and then there's the ones where everybody hangs all over the place. Just think of the experience of that and the impact on your mental well-being. Just think of it, because usually it will be noisy and you have no choice. You can't ask you can try, but people will play music loud whether you want to listen to it or not. That's a kind of culture. So think about all those kind of macro and macro and micro cultures and how they impact on our mental well-being, especially on the mind, on this one, and your emotions. So with that, in terms of psychiatry and mental health development and practice, there's kind of broadly, and I'm going to stick here to the kind of Euro and Afrocentric and probably Eastern. So, hello. I've had a message saying the recording has stopped. Doctor, are you there? Hello.
Hello, Prof. You can go on. I think it's my note taker that has stopped recording. It's okay.
Okay, sorry. Okay. So let's now look at kind of two cultures which probably impact most of you students on this lecture, whether you're from West Africa, South Africa, East Africa, North Africa, whatever. There's kind of the Eurocentric component of psychiatry in what we study when we are training, and then from that has developed different routes and experiences emerging from that. In terms of formalized psychiatry, it's been very much Eurocentric, has always been Eurocentric. And a lot of the definitions and diagnosis processes that were developed in Western Europe. That's just a fact. And that has been kind of the Eurocentric bit to this was actually impacted upon by a French philosopher called René Descartes. You may have heard about Cartesian philosophy. In his, when he was kind of exploring the whole issue called the discourse on method. And you probably heard this statement. And at the core of Descartes' philosophy was something called cogito ergo sum in Latin, which means in English, I think, therefore I am. So everything was very much based on the individual. This is what the Europeans called the time of enlightenment and so on. In other words, what he was arguing is truth is subjective. It is the person's subjective experience that is the foundation of their truth. Therefore, there was a resistance to kind of a rejection to commonly held traditions. And so I call it the I, me, myself period. So everything is about me. And if I don't like it, then it can be true. If I don't think so, I don't hold the same view, then you're wrong, I'm right. That was kind of the extreme end of it. And the Cartesian philosophy had a really big impact on European thinking, European culture, both macro and micro, but also on the development of medicine. You will be surprised that actually psychiatry was never thought of as really medicine. They were just these funny people who don't practice medicine, but somehow they'll be accepted. So psychiatry actually came into being kind of late 18th, mid 19th centuries, respectively. And before this, psychiatry wasn't considered really medicine. All this as a consequence of Cartesian philosophy. It was very much about the individual. And if the person presenting did not kind of able to express a view that was cogent and comprehensible, the only way they treated people is to pull them away in asylums because they were a threat to kind of the normal flow of life. So that's kind of the Eurocentric approach to psychiatry, and we'll see in a minute why the consequence of this. Then you might call it the Africa-centric experience of psychiatry, which has developed as people learned and realized and analyzed that actually you can't apply Eurocentric approach to clinical practice as a one bit fits all, because people have got different experiences. And therefore, this concept was actually picked up and really expanded by Dr. John Beatty, who was a professor at Makerere University, especially in the early 60s, and he turned the head upside down. So he talked about summus ergo sum, In other words, we are and therefore I am. And in very simplistic terms, it is the community that defines who we are. It is the community that gives us identity. There's value in community. There's value, and it's good to treasure kind of a common experience and wisdom. Our communities give us identity. So Professor Mbiti was very much about, it's about we, us, because if there isn't a we and us, there is no me. And that has got its own problems when it comes to mental health practice, but it's the complete opposite of European philosophy. At the core of this, what Dr. Mbiti was trying to capture is you have to see the human being. The human being has to be in the context of locus. If you and this was reflected across, so we lived in communities. We still live in communities to some degree. In spite of people going to town, you still are identified to a particular place. You've got relatives and you've got connections. So what Professor Mbiti was trying to acknowledge that actually in the context of identity, and this is important in mental health as well, unless you've got a community of fallback that gives you an identity, that is going to impact you and your mental well-being or how you feel about yourselves, and certainly will impact you if, God forbid, you're mentally unwell. Because if you are mentally unwell and you are in the Eurocentric bit, you are very much you. Everything is about you, rather than how does your community help you and support you in terms of your journey to recovery. In the African context, it's the exact opposite. Your family, your community become terribly important. They are part and parcel of the environment within which you begin your journey for recovery. And actually, there is research. I think it was done by, I forget his name now. It used to be at Queen Mary's University, Nottingham Healthcare Trust. He looked at some studies, and actually, his conclusion was that actually people on the African continent have actually got a far much better prognosis in terms of recovery from mental illness than people in the UK or in Western Europe for that matter. And it all seemed to go back to community, the me, the we, the us, and me, and that kind of general acceptance of the individual in spite of their odd behavior in inverted commas. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Good. Thank you. So it's important kind of to that kind of Eurocentric and African-centric to understanding of mental health, because that's what the cultures are. And this then gives us the whole issue about cultural perspectives. And I've just used the UK here, or Western Europe, because I live in the UK and I know Kenya, so I can kind of say that. So mental health or psychiatry in the UK or Kenya, for instance, assumes a given cultural context. And even now in 2026, still most of Western psychiatry is very much still governed by cultural norms. So for instance, if you analyze casework in kind of Western psychiatry, you will tend to see, for instance, conditions like depression being associated mainly with women, and conditions to do with the, people are psychotic and probably a bit more antisocial. It tends to be associated with men and young men. And when it comes to really kind of florid experiences in terms of mental illness experience, because of the cultural components in terms of how we share information, how we manifest, and how we present our distress, most Black people tended to be on more the psychotic end and were more likely to be put under section, not because they were any more dangerous, but it was their presentation of their distress, of their emotional distress, of their mental distress, only exhibited itself in cultural terms. So they may have been, people may dance, or people may sing, or people may talk to themselves, although they're hearing voices, but actually, we talk about speaking to our past ancestors. So that's how we really began kind of really fighting very hard, kind of in the 80s, to begin to introduce the whole concept of gender experience and the cultural experience into psychiatric practice, because the experience of women in psychiatry wasn't very good either, because predominantly the clinicians were men, and therefore they had kind of a categories and a cultural perception, their own biases, which I'll come to later, about actually the experience of women and how women need to behave, and how women, what kind of behavior is accepted of women in society, and kind of found its way back into psychiatry. So we really fought very hard around cultural issues and the gender issues around psychiatric practice. So, for instance, for the Inuit or the Eskimos, they have no word for psychiatry. The Inuit in their language, the Inuit only talk about mental health in terms of physical environment. They talk in terms of their feelings, their psychological and emotional feelings. They talk about demons and spirit possessions, and cultural change or social change, adverse social change, has an impact on them. So it's a bit like the African, really, the African experience. There is no specific word that actually talks about psychiatry or mental illness. So it is defined in the context of environment, physical or otherwise. It's defined in terms of how people feel and they experience the world, and in terms of spirit possession and whatever. It's very, very, very similar to the African experience, actually. In sub-Saharan Africa, community mental health is often as its locus in relationships, very often between the mundane and the transcendent. By this I mean that, our experience of distress when we haven't got food, are hungry, or without money, the things that are actually the ordinary things of life. And when people then get distressed and get mentally unwell, then sometimes they tend to have recourse to the transcendent, to the other, to ancestors or to the voices of the God and so on. So the understanding of these relationships in society becomes really important. That's why I started off by saying we have to think of ourselves as three-dimensional beings, because when it comes to psychiatry and mental health and mental well-being and mental illness in sub-Saharan Africa, this becomes really important, because that's how people exhibit their distress. It's always in the context of relationships. So you might hear things like, somebody looked at me badly the other day, or I don't know, they made a signal that actually didn't make any sense because they were poisoning me, or they stuck a stick in somewhere and it was all about kind of giving me the evil eye or wishing me unwell. That's the kind, a bit like the Inuit. That's not saying it's primitive. It's just different. It's just a different experience and a different way of making sense of why the mind is not feeling well, of why the mind is not settled, of why the mind is disorientated. So it becomes really important. So psychiatry in sub-Saharan Africa, I think we are beginning to get it. I think we are beginning to understand that actually we can't just apply blindly Eurocentric approaches to mental health practice in Kenya, in Zambia, in South Africa, in Cameroon or whatever, because the relationships are different. It goes back to those two things I was talking about, the Cartesian philosophy, cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am, or John Mbiti's description of life's experience, sumus ego est. We are, therefore I am. That's at the very core of this. In Eastern world and in Australasia or the Pacific, in most Eastern countries or the Pacific, good mental health is about maintaining equilibrium. That's why you've got temples. That's why you've got things like the Dalai Lama bit and the monks who kind of go away from, and people come to them to seek equilibrium and balance and peace and calm. So the Eastern approach is very much about equilibrium. And actually, even if you look at how they manage actual physical disease, there's always an emotional, there's always a mind, there's always a soul approach to it. Hence, we are beginning to, so you know things like, Tai Chi, for instance, as an exercise. People just do this openly during the day because it's part and parcel of maintaining inner calm. Meditation, yoga, this is all Eastern. So they're very much in touch with the mind and the soul component of mental well-being, because if those two are taken care of, the third one, the body, is well. And when the body is not well, then they work on it in terms of the spirit and the soul. And that's why very much now in Europe and North America, there's an increasing use of complementary and alternative and traditional medicine therapies. But I don't mean traditional in the sense, in terms of Eastern. So a lot of people do yoga. A lot of people go for mindfulness. It's all very Eastern, because there is that component of the third component of us, which actually has to be part and parcel of medicine. And it's interesting, actually, these practices have got a really positive impact on people's healing when they're actually physically, medically unwell. So, for instance, people use meditation and yoga to manage illness rather than actually have pills popped into their mouths all the time. So they find ways of managing pain rather than actually taking analgesia, for instance. That's kind of the Eastern approach. So in this context, people tend to consult traditional healers, because first and foremost, because either they have had no experience of statutory mental health services in terms of the Western model, and they're looking at, they're actually acknowledging there is something wrong with my relationship with the environment. Maybe something wrong with maybe I've upset my ancestors, and therefore they'll seek people who are seen and experienced as traditional healers. Now there's healers and there is healers. We have to be careful about this. Therefore, they seek they kind of go into a system, into a person whom the community and the society has given or acknowledges the authority that actually they have got a way of being able to help the person engage with themselves. And yes, they may use herbs and so on. And these herbs are medicinal, but they actually know which herbs will be used for what. Hence, the recourse to traditional healers in sub-Saharan Africa and also in the Eastern world. So places like mosques and temples and gurdwaras in the East become areas of peace. People go to these places to seek calmness of the mind. They go to these places to seek connection. They go to these places to be accepted. And this is part and parcel of their healing process. Christians actually go to church. I know, for instance, that when I worked on the wards and acute wards, I can't think of any one Black person who was a patient who didn't attend a religious ceremony on Sunday. Initially, people were resistant, but actually we argued the case that actually this is part and parcel of their healing process, and this is an important connection to them, to their well-being. And for instance, just think of how we started this lecture. Dr. Ayuya kind of helped us to think about gratitude, to worship. It's acknowledging that actually these things bring us calm. These things set us in a context actually for us then to be able to explore. So actually, the way we started this lecture is one way that actually we sustain and manage mental well-being. Just those 5-10 minutes of calm and focusing on gratitude are a big component of mental health practice. And unfortunately, when we practice, sometimes we don't prescribe this. Or if we prescribe, we are very general, we don't give people particulars. So really, really important in terms of areas of worship, parts of worship. This is the soul component of the three-dimensional being that I said we were. And in terms of, because we haven't got the words for mental illness, people tend to use phrases. I'm afraid those from Cameroon and if you speak French, I might throw a phrase in there, but I can't think of South Africa or North Africa. But in Kenya, if sometimes you ask somebody, VP, bwana leo mimi nasikia hoi hoi. Anybody from Kenya heard this phrase before? Ni hoi hoi? Any Kenyans here? Talk to me.
All the time, Prof.
Yeah, hoi hoi. It's a phrase that this is what they're saying. Actually, things are not well. That's all it means. Things are not well. The exact opposite of poor. So in French, they might say, je ne sais quoi. Something like that. No, I really don't know. I just don't know. And this will show, so it shows in the language, it shows in the behavior, because when they're saying this, you can almost tell their body mirrors the distress. They've got either hunched shoulders, or their face is blank. Okay. And if it's in the context of relationships, again, yeah, you might meet them, but actually, you meet with somebody, they're not very well, and when they're sitting next to you, because you have a relationship with them, you can tell there's something wrong, even when they've not opened their mouth, just by looking at the way they're sitting down, how they are carrying themselves. People may be influenced because of housing difficulties. I've seen this happen in Nairobi when I'm in Kenya sometimes, or problems with money. Add all this. This is what somebody you're working with in a clinical context is actually bringing to the clinical exchange. And you would be a short-sighted clinician not to explore these areas for two reasons. One, in terms of actually, is it exacerbating the issue? Is it the cause? Is it the trigger? And how, by sometimes helping solve the social issues, actually you solve some of the mental health issues. So things become somatic. I remember when we were setting up a new service here in the UK, Investor, which is mainly Asian and African. Actually, one of the phrases that always sticks with me was a woman from Ghana who said, "I've got sadness in my heart." That is the way she would explain depression. I've got sadness in my heart. So it's almost like they make the experience somatic for it to have relevance. Therefore, language in the context of clinical conversation becomes really important. Okay, so what does it mean in terms of diagnostics or diagnosing people? Like I said, even now, a lot of the diagnostic methodology still is steeped in Western cultural context. The language, the tools, we use English, for instance, the methodologies, the experience, even some of the beginnings of the research is still very much Western based. Therefore, there's already a cultural bias even before you start. And within mental health practice, if you're not culturally capable, the temptation is to attribute certain behaviors and interpret them from your cultural context, because that's what you know best. Now, what's really interesting is when you've got white doctors, those who have not been trained now, because now the expectation in the UK is actually every white doctor, learns cultural capability and competence as part of their training, have tended to miss things unless they're involved. And what's interesting, the Black psychiatrist actually picks up a lot of stuff when they're actually dealing with white patients, for instance. Why? because of their cultural competence, because of their cultural experience and their cultural background, they are not just focusing on behavior. They hear people, they hear words which mean something different. So in the UK, sometimes somebody might say, I'm sick. It is sick. It doesn't mean it is sick. It just means it's good. So language becomes changed. So the equivalent of what I said with you about hoi hoi, or in French, je ne sais quoi, or sijui, whatever, becomes a window for the psychiatrist to explore. Can you tell me a bit more about that? What does that mean? What does that feel like? Metaphors. I think there's a phrase in English which I can never remember the order. It's something like it's 6.5 dozen of the other is the phrase. 6.5 dozen of the other. No, all that means it's all mixed up. If somebody says that when they're coming to consult you, they are saying to you, there's a whole lot of things that are wrong. And at the moment, I'm so down, I couldn't be bothered even to think about them. That's what that phrase means if it is shared in a psychiatric context. If it is shared in normal daily life, it means something completely different. It just means there's a whole lot of things you've got to think about. So then language becomes really important, and understanding how language is used in different cultures becomes really important. And if you don't know, don't be afraid to ask. Can you explain for me what you mean, perhaps? I just want to make sure I don't miss it. Ask. Although you are the expert, you don't know everything. Because the patient, I hate to use that word, the man or woman in front of you knows their experience far much better than you do. You have the skill to pick up what that experience means in psychiatric terms, in terms of symptomatology, but you don't have the lived experience. And that's really, really important to engage with somebody when you're involved in the diagnostic process. And we'll see. So human, when you are involved in the diagnostic process, I need you to think about these 4 things, just to guard against these things. See the human being first before you see the symptoms. I'll explain to you what I mean. Be conscious of your potential cultural bias. So if you're in Cameroon and you're seeing somebody from Ghana, or you're seeing somebody from Kenya, or you're seeing somebody from the Congo, just be mindful that there may be, although you share the same continent, there may be experience by nature of their environment, by nature of their language, by nature of their life experience that is going to be expressed differently. And if they use a word, check it out so that you avoid your cultural bias, either through language, behavior, or action or gestures. If it's an Italian and they're very unwell, they will gesture all over. They'll be throwing their hands all over the place, cussing and swearing, because that's how Italians talk. So if they're doing that in the context of a clinical consultation, you just need to check out how relevant or irrelevant those gestures are. Also, the other thing to guard against is gender bias, which kind of brings up issues around power dynamics. Unfortunately, still, especially in the African continent, men still have got views of women and vice versa. And if you have got a male psychiatrist diagnosing a woman, you need to be really honest with yourself and be conscious when your gender bias might be impacting your exchange with the person in front of you. Really, really important. So guard against this. Guard against socioeconomic bias. Things like, oh, well, they live in that part of the city, or they live in that part of the country, they're poor. Maybe this is just they're having a problem because they haven't got any money, or they feel a bit disorientated, or maybe they're a bit drunk. That's because they're just behaving like that. Actually, sometimes drinking is about self-medication. And just because they come from a particular area, you have automatically applied a socio-economic bias unconsciously without actually engaging the person, because the person in front of you can only express themselves in their life day-to-day experience and language and behavior and actions. So those four tend to creep in. And this is what I meant by competency. We'll come to that in a few minutes' time. So it's really, really important that we guard against this. Otherwise, we lose and end up giving the wrong treatment or giving the wrong type of support. Where are we? What's the time now? Okay, I'll go through this one and then we'll have a 5-minute break. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so culture, whether it's Eurocentric or African or Asian or Pacific or South Pacific, it's both a curse and a blessing. So the Eurocentric model of a cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am, sometimes has all its positives because the person in front of you, you're focusing on them as the individual. Yeah. So that's it. That's can aid or hinder recovery because you might make assumptions as well. If it's inequality, whether it's socioeconomic or political or whatever, that can also impact your relationship with or your collaboration with the person in front of you. So culture can have a both good and bad effect. If it's in the context of African experience, you might begin to think about actually what are the family relationships, and therefore we use community to control the individual. I have seen with my own eyes relatives pretty close to me, my family, where the woman was being domestically abused, and that was a trigger for depression. And guess what was happening? All the men, you know, when they were people were exploring what the relationship was, it was the woman who was brought in front of the men and the kind of elderly ladies, not the man. And I remember asking, why isn't the husband here? And so actually it's the lady who is kind of making all the noise. Well, actually, she's not making all the noise because she lives with somebody. And it's important we bring that person here so that actually there is no bias in terms of, this was a gender issue, but this was the African male-dominated patriarchal society. So right there, even in the absence of psychiatry, there's biases. And therefore, the danger is these generalizations are applied and we end up stereotyping people. Equally the same for men. So, you know, they will excuse the man for getting drunk, but somehow there is an ease about the woman getting drunk. I know that from my own community, it still happens. It's changed a lot, but it still happens because people are still, you know, we were brought up in a particular way. So it's really important that actually culture can be both an aid or a hinder to recovery for two reasons. You either assume because you know the culture, or you miss the messaging because you don't understand the culture. So again, be very careful. While culture is important in enabling you to do that, it's also, you just need to guard against some of those cultural bits that actually can become oppressive and detracting rather than enhancing somebody's mental well-being. I just want to go back to when I talked about the human being and the symptoms. I said to you about my mom. I'm very quick, and then we'll have a break after this. We had a guy, I come from Western Kenya in a town called Kisii, and we had a guy whom we called the madman of the town. It's only years later I got to understand he was suffering from what do you call it? It's gone now. The suspicion, schizophrenia now. Come on, Dr. Ali, help me out. When somebody thinks everybody's out to hurt them.
Paranoid.
Paranoid schizophrenia, that's the one. Thank you. Thank you. He was a paranoid schizophrenic. Now, I didn't know that. We just knew him as the madman. And he was always chasing people and frightening people. And people ran away from him. In some cases, he actually injured people. But one thing always stood out for me. Whenever my mom met him, he never behaved violently, ever. As far back as I can remember, because my mom used to say something like, I think his name was Barnabas. Barnabas, can you please stop frightening people? And he would say yes. And then she would say, if you need help, you need to go to the hospital, not run after people. But it was the way she said it. And I could never understand why he always listened to her. Never, ever, ever frightened her. Never, ever, ever kind of shouted at her. Whenever she met with him, he always listened to her. It's only years later that I began to understand, because I kind of checked back what my mom did. She looked him straight in the eye whenever she was talking to him. And then she used her voice. She wasn't telling him off. She was just making an observation. This is a woman who knew nothing about psychiatry, but she understood human beings. And that has always stayed with me, because she's about the only person in town whom this guy, whom Barnabas spoke to. And then sometimes she used to kind of take him to the local cafe and buy him a cup of tea and say to him, now, okay, are you okay? Will you be able to go home? I think you better go home and stop frightening people. And I'll be coming to town, because my mom used to sell maize in town. I'm coming to town. When you're here, come and see me. And what I got to understand years later, she saw the human being first before she saw the behavior and the actions. And somehow, through her looking him straight in the eye and through her using her voice, she managed to connect with him. And he heard, this is a person who sees me. I'm using the word see here in a very special way. She hears me, she sees me. She's not condemning me, she doesn't judge me. She sees me as a human being. And that's all she did. And I think as clinicians, this is a really, really, really important thing to have. See the human being you're going to see first before you begin to work out the symptoms. Because the way we are trained is, you see this behavior, you attach a symptom to it. You see that behavior, you attach a symptom to it. You see that action, you attach a symptom to it. And we completely forget the human being in front of us. And I think for me, people's recovery begins when you connect with the human being first. Because once you validate them as a human being, then you are able to get through. I remember giving somebody a hug in front of the ward when I was a student nurse, and I got into trouble. And I was told by the charge nurse, you're crossing boundaries. Now, I went into nursing as an adult. So I said to her, what boundaries? We are dealing with people's emotions, distress. These are things that actually happen to the individual internally. And all I was doing was give the person a hug. I'm acknowledging that actually, yes, you are distressed. And I'm communicating my seeing you that way. Because culturally, that's what you would do when you're coming down somebody. I got into trouble. Well, they didn't sack me, but I was told off. And in the end, I actually asked the woman, do you have a child? Yes. What happens when your child or your daughter or your husband or your sister is distressed? You give them a hug. And in psychiatry, we are dealing with their emotions and everything else. And I'm not saying you start giving people hugs, because you've got to be careful where you do it. So you have got a private consultation. For God's sake, don't give them a hug. Okay, so it's about appropriateness and immediacy. I just wanted to mention that in terms of the human being in front of me, because I found that completely changed my mental health practice. Shall we stop for 5 minutes and we'll come back in 5 minutes? Just
Yes.
take a breath and grab a drink and so on, and we'll come back.
Thank you.
Let me see if I can move down. If you're going to see my face next time. Nope. Not. I might actually stop sharing and start again. See if it will work. Okay. Where are we? There we are, I think. Interesting. Yay! I think I've cracked it. Good. I think I've cracked it. Okay. Okay. You okay now to start? Hello.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes,
Awesome.
yeah.
Right. Can I stop you and say anybody got any question now before we go to the next section? I'm going to leave some time at the end for questions, but I just thought I've come to a point where I think we have nicely rounded it up before we go into the next one. So please feel free to ask any question at this stage of what we have gone through so far.
It's not a question. For me, my name is Sheila. Oh,
Yeah,
let me
I can
just.
see Sheila. I can see your, yeah. Come on,
Let
put
me
your
just-
face on. Let's see Sheila.
Yeah, you'll see me just in a
There you go.
minute.
Well, excellent. Now I know
There
I'm
you
talking
go.
to a human being.
Yeah, I'm a human being. One of the things that has really excited me is about the story of your mother.
Yeah.
How she was able to confine that whatever the guy who had schizophrenia, paranoid schizophrenia.
Yeah.
And I also remember, I was touched by that story because I remember what I did also. There was a madman they used to call in the city who I was a small young girl, but I just felt this guy is just a human being. Why are people getting scared of him? And I offered him bread and whatever, and he took and we talked. And I realized he wasn't chasing me. Yeah, so whatever you said about your mother, the voice, and just using your own voice, just using looking him in the eye and making him feel he's a human being.
Yeah.
That you're not judging him, you're showing him just that, you're just like us, you're okay. Yeah, it's just that some things are not quite right, but you're fine. You're
That's what
just a human
we talk in that in terms of creating rapport. And that little experience when I became a mental health clinician, when I started teaching also, when I worked in the Department of Health, has influenced my approach to working with people, has influenced the way I teach, has influenced how I began, for instance, looking at developing psychological services when I worked as so that thing really made a real practical impact in my practice. And I know because I worked with a woman when she was about 27 in an acute ward, and years later, after I worked with her in 1984. I was starting in the Department of Health in London, and I got a phone call from the reception saying to me, "Grace is here." And I said, "Who?" She had said to them, "Can you tell him it's Grace from Free and Hospital? That's the hospital trust I worked in, and the ward I worked in." And I knew exactly who it was.
Wow.
And all she came to say was, "Thank you for saving my life."
Wow. Wow.
That was I worked with her in 1987. She saw me. I was working at the department, so it's 2004. She had been looking for me for 10 years.
Wow.
All she was going to say is thank you. I broke down.
Wow.
I just broke down because you don't know how much you touch a human being when they're in distress if you validate them as a human being.
Yeah, thank you.
I thank my mom for that.
Thank you. I also feel that is a very great thing. Yeah.
Thank you for the comment. Anybody else for the comment or a question?
Yes, mine is not a question, is a comment, just like
Please
Sheila.
go ahead. Yeah.
And I'm still looking at the guy with the paranoid schizophrenia.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm looking at it like we are students doing even psychometric assessment, and we are there also complaining like these tools were prepared for the Western world. And I think that story just now brings multiculturalism home in a way that imagine that guy comes to my clinic for treatment.
Yeah.
And however much I will assess, I will do all this psychometric assessment. If I am not able to bring it home to him, they're just tools. They're not for him.
Yeah.
And that means then I've not succeeded in helping this person. So
I wouldn't beat myself. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so I think that story and now the whole thing of multiculturalism is like my exposure even to the tools and to this means then I need to know how to put the two together for me to help my client, the one that I'm exposed to.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting. And aside from that, my mother used to tell me, I'll say it in Swahili, mwenda wazimu ukimwangalia kwa macho na kuogopa.
There you go.
So I'm like that eye contact actually creates a rapport in therapy. But you see, as a child, you fear a madman. So
because that's how we've been brought up.
Yeah, my mom used to tell me muangalie kwa macho hata kufanyia kitu. So I think that brings the message home. Thank you.
I just want to pick up the point you made about tools and how you how you need to apply them. The tools themselves, I mean, there are certain principles in psychiatric practice that are universal. You know, a tool is a tool is a tool. The difference is how you apply it. So, and you don't really have to think about Western Europe. You're from Kenya. I think there was a colleague here from Cameroon. Even trying to diagnose somebody from Cameroon, and you are a Kenyan psychiatrist, you're going to have to home in on certain things, and you're going to have to apply those tools differently. And a lot of it is what I shared with you before. It's about language, it's about behavior, it's about words. It's interesting. For instance, you said psychometric. You and me and somebody else knows about psychometric. But actually, if you're able to explain to the person what you're doing in ordinary language, they're more likely to engage with you because they understand. I mean, the language they tend to use in my brain is not right. So they understand something is not right with their mind. So if you're able to explain to them what you're doing because they have told you their mind is not correct, and you use language that they understand, you know, I will use something very similar. Like, okay, what I'm trying to do now is I'm using a system or I'm using a skill that is going to help me understand what perhaps is going on with your mind. Do you see what I'm saying? They can engage with that because I've said to you the problems in my mind, and you're saying to them, what I'm doing here, I'm trying to make sense of what's happening to your mind. The word psychometric goes out the window. And for me, I think that's the challenge when you're a clinician, is being able to bring that stuff down to ordinary language. And your behavior is important too. So when you're having a consultation, focus on the individual. Or before you start, just say to them, because you're going to be telling me a lot of things, there's sometimes when I may have to make notes and write down things. Please don't think I'm ignoring you. Just by saying that at the very beginning, they know you're present for them. I hope that helps.
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Okay. Right. If there isn't any other comment or question, shall I go ahead? I'm going to canter through this one rather quickly because really in a sense now I'm beginning to bring it to practice now.
Maybe a comment or a question together.
Yes, please. Fire away. Martin.
Yeah. So thank you for your very insightful sharing, which is very provoking as I follow through. And one of the things that is coming to me is how we are immersed or how we are fully impacted by our culture. People who have socialized us, and so like when you were just sharing your story, I was one, oh my God, how impact it is. All this context and all these people that has influenced us different ways and so on. And what makes us who we are as a person sometimes is so huge. And so on, the impact in us. And so just reflecting, like you are one of your points, which I think is very helpful, that you see the human person first before you see the symptoms.
I think that's critical, absolutely critical.
Yeah, it's critical. And yes, it's good, we agree with it, but sometimes it can become a bit challenging in some ways, just to be able to see the human person first, because seeing how influenced, how we are impacted by our culture and even religion and so on, and just being able to see the human. And we know also sometimes that even the biases we are talking about is unconscious, sometimes you even being aware that I'm biased here is very, very hard sometimes. And for example, you're talking of a culture is both a blessing and a curse. Now it becomes so hard sometimes to be able to balance. How am I using this culture as a blessing, and how am I aware that it's a curse? And the issues that comes out now, like issues of misdiagnosis, like positive or negative misdiagnosis comes in, because how far can I enter to use a culture so that I can do the right thing? And sometimes I think I'm using the culture to do the right thing. I'm overusing the culture that is blinding me more, not to see the issue at hand. So sometimes seeing how to balance that cultural issues, it can become a bit challenging, and so on.
Well, it seems that you've used an important word, it's unconscious. And then you've talked about it's challenging. Now you know that it's challenging. What I found useful is when I'm going to see, even if, I'm not involved in direct clinical practice now, but I'm a coach and a mentor. I still use some of the skills are relevant. The first thing before I see somebody, I call what I say, I manage my state. What do I mean by that? I am getting myself into a position in my mind to be to be present. That's point number one. So it's about my state, because the person who's going to come to you is in a mental state. And once I've kind of said, okay, my challenge is to be present, the next thing is I say to myself, it is not about me, it's about them. That may sound really stupid and simple, but you consciously then now choose to make it about them. So you've done two things. You've gone within you, and now you're saying it's about them. And the previous speaker, I forgot what the name was. It Sheila or somebody who said who talked about clients? The language we use is important. That's why you haven't had me use the word patient, and I've done that purposefully, because I want to see the man, woman, girl, young person in front of me, because that's who they are. When we use the word patient, we automatically strip them of that humanity. We don't intend to do it, but that's the impact, because there's no, you don't relate to a patient. You relate to that man or that mom or that dad or that sister in front of you. That's about the state. And because you have put yourself in a state and you have said it's about them, because if you're really genuine about that, when the bias is beginning to come, you will sense it. And the question I found helpful, I ask myself, I don't say it in front of the person. I ask myself in my head, what is this telling me about me? Which forces me to go back to the state. So those are some little skills you might use when you're actually beginning to engage with somebody. Because as you quite rightly said, this is unconscious. And by learning to use the word client, because when you have got the client, you have got a duty of care towards them. A patient is a term. It doesn't refer to somebody. A client is somebody who has got a duty to you. You've got a duty to. So even in the UK, we use the word service use and whatever. I don't use those words anymore. I use the word client. Because in business, you look after your client. I hope that helps. So the language is really important.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's. I don't want to keep you there all night. Right. This is kind of capturing really some of the. So I call this the hub and spoke visualization of applying culture. So what I've just talked about, the person comes from if we begin from the personality and culture end, top left-hand corner and go right. So, somebody's personality, that's the person who they are, is themed in that environment I talked about. Is themed in the norms, the stories, the experience, the understandings, the language, the translations. They are also involved in attitudes. Those lead to attitudes. And those attitudes are within family, within structures, within gender roles, and so on. So that's kind of part of you. This is all part of you getting yourself in the state I was talking about. Then also it's about the person may have the possibility to choose a healer. So they might choose you as a psychiatrist. So we talk about client choice. And sometimes if you are a practice group and you've got a mom or a girl coming to see you, it would seem to make sense to actually give them the option to talk to a woman clinician. Just give them the option. Because you begin to deal with the prognosis already, because how you interact with the person in the course of their consultation, in the course of diagnosis, actually begins to set in place the whole prognosis after that, during the journey of recovery. Be mindful of migration. Even if it's somebody moving from Lake Victoria, going to live in Nairobi, or from Lake Victoria, going to live in Central Province, or somebody from Cameroon moving to live in Kenya. Be mindful that actually that migration has consequences. It has both mini and major trauma, for instance. Cultural shock, how things are done. I'll give you a practical example. I studied in Tanzania in Mwanza for a while. And in Kenya, we use matatus, as you know. And in my head, I was waiting for a matatu to come. I didn't even think twice. I was just waiting for a matatu to come. And I left all these buses, big coaches go by. And I said, and I remember asking somebody, why isn't there a matatu here? And he said to me, what do you mean matatu? He said, the little Nissans and he said, well, we don't use those, we just use buses. That was me subconsciously having an image that I brought with me from Kenya and imposing it in Tanzania. So I missed 4 buses. I would have been in Mwanza about an hour and a half ago. But because I was thinking Kenyan, I was waiting for a matatu. There you go. We are talking about 1981 here, 1980, I think. Yeah. So also there are certain ways in terms of cultural, how certain symptoms and symptomatology is exhibited culturally. So people might talk about God speaking to me when they're hearing voices. Or they might say, my baby is talking to me. They probably are going back to, they probably didn't grieve well. They didn't go through a good grieving process. So the grief almost begins to manifest in their distress. People may have moved from, I don't know, from Cameroon to France, or like me, I moved to the UK, and they may experience racism. And that can trigger mental illness. That can trigger insecurity. That can trigger trauma. So these are all part and parcel of your in terms of actually then how do you begin providing this person treatment or care or therapy? How you do it is also important. Remember, if people are talking to you about, somebody's poisoning me, they might react in terms of how they might react to you giving them medication. So how do you engage with them in the conversation to talk about this is medication and it's not poison? Can you see the challenge? There's a challenge there, and I've experienced that. Some people, in terms of sickle illness and behavior, people will somatize mental health problems. Like I said to you, I've got sadness in my heart. So listen to the language. They might choose symptoms. Like I said to you before, in Kiswahili, you might say, daktari leo sijisikii vizuri sijui ni nini. They can't give you, it's as the hoi hoi bit. But actually, there, nasikia baridi kidogo, sijui kichwa changu, kipo vipi, je ne sais pas, peut-être c'est ma tête, ou quoi, je ne sais pas quoi, as the French would say. So listen to the way they're using the mental bit by making it physical. Listen to the content of the symptoms. Like, God is talking to me. They're talking about voices. So listen, what is it they're experiencing in the voices? Let them talk about the voices. What is it about your grandparents or your ancestors that is worrying you? Help me understand. Because by saying that, you make it acceptable. You're not judging them because they're hearing voices. You're not making them feel stupid. You're allowing them. So use the voices they are saying are, if that's the content of their consultation, ask them what the voices are telling them. Ask them the relationship with the ancestor. Ask them maybe why the ancestor might be speaking to them. Because in that conversation, they're going to give you clues. So you're still applying culture, but actually you're using language to decode that culture. And it becomes very easy, really. So like I told you about my granddad. My granddad, my granddad was actually practicing CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, he knew nothing about cognitive behavioral therapy, but because he understood human beings, he understood if my grandson is walking around with his shoulders hunched, he's sad about something. And I had a tough time because my granddad saw me through me struggling about my parents getting split and everything else. And my granddad would come and sit with me on a bench, usually outside my house or outside his house, and he just put his arm around me and did not say a word. And he did not need to say a word, because just by doing that, he was transmitting to me, I am present. And that's all I needed. I am present. He heard me. He saw me, as we would say. In terms of cognitive approach to therapy, he understood my behavior. Therefore, he knew I was going to behave in a particular way. And my behavior was, I was walking around with my head down because I was sad. Therefore, he saw the thinking, he saw the behavior, he saw the action, and he acted appropriately. Just like my mom was saying, he looked at the person in the eye, changed their voice, connected with them, and the result was different. So the choice is there. They will give you what you need. It's just about you listening to both the language, the action, and the behavior, and combining those two. When I was talking to cognitive behavior therapists, I said, look, it's not terribly difficult. Every parent knows when their child is upset, they will scream, they will cry, they'll begin to throw things about, they'll begin to jump up and down. That's cognitive, that's CBT. They're thinking a particular way, they're behaving a particular way, they act in a particular way. Sometimes we complicate these things too much because we have learned the coded language, because it makes us feel terribly complicated. And actually, at the end of the day, it's how they think, how they're feeling, and they're going to act. For me, that's CBT in one sentence. Anyway, this gives you an idea of kind of how you might apply culture. In terms of services, I've used an example here from the UK. It's about understanding issues around social justice. And by this, I mean things like actually, how do we ensure, for instance, marginalized people in our societies have got access? So in terms of actually, do we design services that actually women can attend and receive therapy appropriately? Do we allow space where we can see women separately instead of seeing men and women? Do we make it safe in terms of when a woman is coming to see a male psychiatrist, if they choose to do so? How do we make sure that actually that woman feels safe in that consultation. That's about the inequalities. And in the UK, we actually had a rule that actually in terms of looks at chaperones and so on. Cultural relevance, you know. But that I mean, you know, the language you use or the way you engage with the person might not be relevant. So look at this, for instance, you are a young psychiatrist and you're seeing a 70-year-old woman. It may look terribly innocent, they see you as the doctor, but subconsciously they see you as their grandchild first. They just can't help it because they are 70, you're 20-something, or you're 30-something. So you are either their son or their grandchild. That in itself subconsciously is going to affect how they're going to talk to you, how they're going to open up to you, because there is an age gap. I forgot to put that in the caution about the age bias. There's an age bias on both ways. So how do you negotiate that so that actually you acknowledge that actually, yes, there's an age differential, but I'm here for you. By just you acknowledging it, it actually helps the other person be at ease. And I can give you an example of that. I can give you examples of this along. You know, I was very, very quickly. When I was training, I went into a general nursing oncology ward, and my first person was supposed to work with in the ward was a 75-year-old woman, a white woman from a place called Luton. There is a thing already. I was about 1974. I was about, 1984. I was about 28, 29. And as soon as I walked into the cubicle, I could see her sit up, and I knew there was discomfort here. So the first thing I said to her is, "This is awkward." I kind of joked about it. "This is awkward. You know, you're probably," and I said to her, "You're probably, you know, I'm probably the last person you are expecting to see, a black young man coming to work with you as an elderly woman, white woman." And I could see her shoulders drop straight away. And I knew just by saying that, I had acknowledged her discomfort. And I said to her, "You tell me what you can do, and I will focus on what you can do." And you know her response. I mean, without going into the detail, her response was, "You are the first person in the 3 weeks I've been in this ward who has said to me, you know, what can you do?" And she was able to do, she was able to wash her upper body without my assistance. So all I could do was make sure that water temperature was right, the basin was right, and everything else, and give her privacy. Just by, so I sensed the age difference, I sensed the racial difference, and I acknowledged it. And just by doing that, it changed the whole relationship. So that's like that's about you getting into a state like I was talking about. So it's about the sensitivity. You know, explore meanings. You have a conversation. You know, if somebody uses, if a man or woman you are seeing, a client you're seeing use a language, a word that you think is significant, check it out. Explore this with each other. Ask, "Oh, maybe I've used this word. Do you know what it means?" I'm sorry, because of my training, sometimes I can throw phrases about and just assume that you understand. So please, if I use a word that you don't understand, please ask me so I can clarify, because I want you to get all the information. Just by doing that, you're acknowledging the individual. Take personal responsibility for that, because you are the clinician. Treat your client with respect. Take personal responsibility for ensuring the communication is helpful. So in terms of improving by services, I mean therapy and so on, accountability is important. I just shared with you an example. Ownership. Say, for instance, you say, we are good people, you have got policies of the organization, you've got your practice. Make sure you practice what you preach. Don't say, we are good, don't talk about, we listen to you, and then you're not present. You've got your head down, writing on your notes, and you're not even looking at the person you're talking to. That completely goes against what you're actually declaring. So walk the talk, own the responsibility, be accountable. That's what we talk about cultural capability. You begin to create capabilities and skills. So you begin to create skills and understanding and a comprehension that makes you capable. Capability. It makes you capable culturally. You won't know everything. You know, I'm a guy from Kisi. There are still things if I go to Luola, around to Kikuyu land, I want to understand. I may kind of interpret as an African person, but you know, the Luo are Nilo-Hamitic. Life is constructed in a particular way. Language is constructed in a particular way. Therefore, I need to understand that. And by asking, that's how you become culturally capable. That's what I meant by capability, cultural capability. So then you actually begin to talk about cultural relevance. And maybe we need to develop research around this in terms of actually certain phrases, certain nuances that actually we experience as in terms of people's different cultural experiences that actually would enhance our practice. So that's about creating capability. Again, another way of summing this is I call it the secret. The K, instead of the C is a K. So it's about you being sensitive. We begin with the top left-hand corner again. Sensitivity. This is about you being present. This is about you being in a state that actually engages with the client, with the person, with the client in front of you. You have some knowledge now. It's how do you use that knowledge to both transmit the knowledge in view of the problem being presented to you, but also use the knowledge you have to pick up the cues from the person in front of you. Because you do have psychiatric knowledge and the person doesn't. So use your knowledge to engage effectively so that actually you can get the information they're giving you, and that putting those together, you'll arrive at something that is joint and understandable and acceptable and right. Empathy. Not sympathy, it's about empathy. It's about trying to be in the person's shoes. You're in a powerful position. There's a power dynamic going on here. This is a man or a woman coming to see a doctor, a professional, somebody whom society respects. So even before they walk into your room, into the consultation room, you already exercise power. The most important thing is to get rid of that power as quickly as possible, because that power can be a barrier. So it's about how you negotiate that power dynamic. And it might be just in a simple thing like, you know, okay, I know I'm the doctor, but I genuinely want to understand how this is impacting your mind, because actually you know best how this is affecting you. Just by using that word, you know best, you are actually acknowledging actually they know their experience. You don't know their experience. And the fact is you don't know their experience. You know the clinical, the psychiatric stuff, psychiatric input to help them, but you need to understand what they experience and then translate that psychiatric knowledge into a therapy. So by just saying to them, you know how this affects you, and I want to understand how that affects you, you automatically address that power dynamic straight away just by doing that. Then actually the treatment you come about with becomes then important, because the treatment, the response will be relative. And it might be something as simple as say, you know, when you wake up tomorrow morning, or when you wake up in the morning, just go for a little walk around your garden, or you know, when you've got a moment, spend some time in the garden if it helps. Do you like doing? Do you like gardening? Do you want? You know, what do you like to do? And if it's psychotropic medication, then it's about explaining to them, really important, how the medication is going to work, what they might feel, and when they feel that, reassure them they won't. This is really important, because when you begin psychotropic medication, it's going to affect people. It's a bit like somebody who starts drinking alcohol the first time. It impacts them. And a lot of people stop taking the medication because they don't understand why they're feeling the way they do. So saying to somebody like, for instance, if you're, I don't know if they're on amitriptyline or whatever they think, you know, you might feel a bit funny, you might feel a bit groggy, you might feel a bit sleepy. Don't worry. Give it 4-5 weeks and it will begin to get used to your body. It's like you said, it's like introducing alcohol to your body. When somebody has got a problem with alcohol, they have got to drink a certain amount for them to begin to function. So think of these tablets as actually disturbing your body balance, And after a while, your body will get used to it, so that when you begin to take it, it won't affect you as it is, and it will probably, you'll actually begin to feel a bit more settled. And then also tell them, actually, because this type of medication may sometimes might increase your appetite. Therefore, you might actually start beginning to eat a lot more regularly. Can you guard against that? And also, if you're eating a bit more, drink a lot more, because you'll have some dry mouth, and maybe take a walk every day, so you don't start putting up weight. Just by giving them that information, you can begin to link. You're giving them information and knowledge for them, so that actually they can engage and actually what do you call it, comply with the treatment and therapy, just by using really ordinary examples. And it's all about relationships and interactions with people. It boils down to language and speech and talk. And I want to touch very briefly on self-care. But before I do that, any question to this point, because we're nearly done now. We have got about 5 minutes to go and then it's finished. So I just want to take a pause there and just check about the questions around the diagnostics and how you apply that in language and behavior and conversation. So question or observation, welcome. We are on time. I know we started slightly late. We are on time, and I don't want to keep you any longer. So please don't, either I'm very good or I'm absolutely useless, because nobody's talking to me.
Well done, Doc. You've done very well. You're absolutely useful.
So anybody, any comment or observation you have seen or something you want me to clarify, please do ask now. I know I'm going to give a few minutes at the end for any more general questions and so on, but I just want to check at this point before I go on the bit about self-care. It's only 2 slides. Okay, we'll wait for the questions later. So I just want to touch slightly on self-care. Now, there is something about you practicing what you preach, because when people come to you, you prescribe things to them. My challenge, and this is something, I think this is about ownership. I frame this in the context of, you can't give what you haven't got. What do I mean? How good your engagement and how good your diagnostic and how good your therapy is going to be sometimes come back to actually how well do you look after yourself, mentally, physically, and emotionally, and spiritually. That's what I mean by you can't give what you haven't got. That's why I started with, we are 3-pronged beings: mind, body, and soul. Which means you've got to look after you to be able to look after your clients well. So you're not having enough sleep, and you've got plenty of clients. You're not putting your clients first, because if you're tired and haven't had a good rest, then the likelihood is you won't be as present. So there is something about you needing to look after yourself too, because actually when you practice what you preach, it becomes part of what you then live, and you live that through your practice. I'm going to challenge every one of you to make some protected time, maybe once a week, or at the beginning of the day, or at the end of the day, even if it's 10, 15 minutes. But certainly have some protected time to look after yourself and just let your mind wander. Because sometimes that's the time it's a time for you to debrief. Or if you can do that with a colleague, that's excellent. But if you can't, it's a time for you to debrief. Just grab a drink, whether it's Uji, soda, whatever, and just sit down and turn off the noises of the world. But my suggestion is to you, have it protected and make it non-negotiable. Now, some people say to me, you can't. Yes, you can. And I'm going to show you exactly how. You can by how you timetable your day. So if you know you've got to catch, I don't know, a vehicle from Jogo Road into town, you may have to wake up maybe 20 minutes earlier, which means you may have to go to bed slightly earlier too. So you plan for the early rise. That's in your control. And you do it once, you do it second time, it becomes a habit. So make it non-negotiable. It's really, really important because sometimes that's when you have the best ideas. If you are in a city, it might be a bit difficult. Find a quieter bit of the city. Or if you can travel out of the city for a few miles, just go with your kid and just make a fool of yourself. Laugh, joke, play, whatever. But please try and make it non-negotiable, because when you make it non-negotiable, you are actually you are taking responsibility and you are being accountable to be genuinely being present for the clients you work with. I find that really important. I have to make a conscious decision to do so. So this is the way I look after myself. I go for a walk every Saturday. Actually, I run 3 times a week in the morning. It's non-negotiable for my family. Anytime between 6:30 and 9 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, Friday is non-negotiable. I'm out on a run, and during that run, I find the rhythm actually helps me relax and looks after my body, but also my mental well-being. I go for a run. I sometimes go cycling. I spend time with my wife. Sometimes I go swimming with my granddaughter, and I also do run a group with older people on a Saturday morning, every Saturday, doing Nordic walking, and I work with them in terms of the older people, get them more the issues around balancing. So some of the exercise I do with them is about helping them to balance in old age and how to avoid and minimize falls. That's my way of giving. But in giving, we are actually having a social connection and everything else. That's the way I self-care. And once a week, I just disappear into the woods and just spend time. Luckily, my children are grown up, so I can do that. But you can still do that even if you've got small kids. Get the husbands and the wives to take some responsibility. So, because this is my way of saying the people I work with are worth me making the time to be present for them. That's how I look after myself. Right, done. So I'm going to send you this because it just gives you a chance for you to reflect on what we have gone through. I am in 2 minds, Daktari, here, because this is stuff that I normally send. This is stuff that I normally train people with. If this class, if this cohort can promise me, if I send you a copy of the slides, I will take away the images and everything else because those are personal bits, and send you this as a handout. Can you please promise me it is for your sole use? Well, actually, do you need it because you've got the recording?
We need it, Prof.
Okay, I need
promise.
you need to promise me.
Because I'll give them a comprehensive exam and I'll have to examine them.
Okay, so I'll send you this. This might be a good way to revise, but please, 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 this is for your own use. And don't share it around, please. And I would encourage you to go and listen to the recording as well. So I'll send you the presentation, the whole presentation. I'll take out the pictures and everything else, but I'll send you the presentation.
Thank you, Prof.
And then, yeah, this will be in the presentation as well. So this is the process I use whenever I work with people. Because I call it the 4-stage bit. It's about actually, I need you, not immediately today, but sometime this week, take some time to reflect and capture the insights from this session. Define the action you're going to do from your insight. Really define it specifically. You know, I'm going to make 10 minutes, whatever it is you choose, but define what you're going to do and be very specific about it. Utilize some of what I've shared with you, utilize some of the groups and peer groups and organizations where you are to help you do the learning. So it's about your inner circle. How can you use the wisdom and knowledge from the inner circle to help you kind of highlight your insights? And then, because you are PhD students, I'm sure you've got supervisors, you know, prepare, use some of this stuff to prepare when you go and talk with the supervisor. So prepare yourself when you talk to the supervisor, because that's part of the learning process. What I've shared with you here today is an event. It's a catalyst. The change is going to take place when you start going through this process. And I can guarantee you, with absolutely no doubt in my mind, if you use that process, you will see the change. Use that process in your own life. Use that process for any conference you go to. Use that process for any homework or whatever. I can guarantee you will see a difference. I know that for a fact because I've had feedback on it before. So use it, and including your clinical practice. The insights, write them down, define the actions you're going to take, but that's a change you might make in your practice. Might mean that actually, maybe I need to address the power dynamic with my clients when I'm going to see so and so from now on. That's very specific. I'm going to make sure that actually if somebody's coming to our clinic and they're a woman, and we are going to make sure we offer them the opportunity to see a female doctor if they choose to do so, if they want to do so. Give them the choice. Make it very specific. Okay. I'm done, Professor. Any questions?
Yeah, first to clap for you, and then now they can reflect.
Yeah. Yeah, we have got about 10 minutes for questions. This is the time to ask me questions. You don't ask me, you won't get it. You won't get any answers. So fire away. I think Priska Okemba is wanting to ask a question. I can see the hand waving. Is it Mary or Priska?
I'm just clapping for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. You know, just making this class different, one, and secondly, I think for me, the knowledge, I think it has summarized so much of what this class was all about from the beginning to the end. I want them to reflect, ask questions, so it is their class, and I would like to hear from we have all 27 minutes to ask questions.
Yeah, you start.
Go ahead, and then we shall make our final remarks.
Yeah, please ask me questions now, because that's how we learn. There's no stupid question in where I am. It doesn't matter how simple it is.
No question, you have at least some feedback.
Or a comment, or something you want me to clarify, please.
Exactly.
Allow me to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mine is just kind of a comment.
Please go ahead.
I just noticed some patterns of psychosis reactions with some people. You called them Kisii, somewhere in Kisii, where there was somebody who was affected by schizophrenia, and then they were relating well with your mom.
Okay, yeah.
That really, I could kind of relate to that with my case. We also had one person who was the same case, was schizophrenic. And then my mother, who was a teacher, retired teacher, taught the person, and he maintained he could be wild all over, but when he came home, he was trying to be nice. He could even take a djembe, go dig, come back home, help with water, or just preparing something for us to eat. So I that really kind of made me realize maybe the way we treat mental health, especially psychosis, we need really to bring out the human in them. We need to accept them first, even before we treat them in as a disorder that they may be having. So for me, that has really come out so strongly for me, and I can always remember that. Thank you, Prof.
You're welcome. I mean, just a comment on that. I'm not suggesting you put yourself in danger, but
Oh, sure.
I
Yeah.
can't think. Actually, people who are mentally ill are more vulnerable than actually dangerous. You see, here's the problem. We associate psychosis with risk and danger. That's how we are trained. So what happens is, when we are going to engage the person, that is the message we are giving them. You're risky, you're dangerous. Even if we don't, we are actually doing it unconsciously. That's when we make it risky. If it is how you receive the person, how you acknowledge the person, and you might do something like, you might actually want to make sure that actually the person is in a place whereby if they get distressed, you are both safe. So there's something about you creating a safe environment, but be very, very sensitive. I talked about sensitivity in that thing about secret. Be very sensitive about the non-verbal messages you give out. Because only 7% of communication is words. And I think 30, I think it's 30 something, or just over 30 is actions. More than 50% of our communication is non-verbal. And people will pick up non-verbals, especially when they are anxious. And the first thing to do when somebody's in psychosis is to, like I said before, get in touch with your state straight away. And always, I've said this question has always helped me in my practice. What is this telling me about me? If you're beginning to feel sensitive and so on, you will notice it. Ask yourself the question, what is this telling me about me? And it's about them. I find that trio always helps me to deal with somebody in distress. So yes, and yeah, and the humane bit, I can't emphasize that enough. I really can't.
I hear you, Prof. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Prof.
Yeah.
Yes, first is to really appreciate the insight. It is quite a lot that we are reflecting on. Quite a lot. The whole sharing is quite encouraging, quite challenging. And especially now, even at that point where you have ended it, in terms of having the protected time, that time for your own self.
Yeah.
Because I totally agree. I think we are currently living a sedentary life that whereby we have gotten glued to screens, we have gotten glued to a very busy life where we are easily losing ourselves because we don't have time to reflect about our own selves. And I think the way you've raised it, and especially being a psychologist, where we lose ourselves, and then there we are there to listen and to really help people when we are empty. I think we really need to really take that point of, creating time for yourself and having that as a protected time. I think that is very, very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Because we are really losing ourselves in terms of the current life, which is so busy. You are, wherever you are, you have the phone, you have a screen. So there is minimal time actually for your own selves, because wherever you are, even when you are alone, there is still noise, if not around you, in your mind through the media that you're using. So that's protected time where you switch off and you keep off everything,
Yeah.
and you live it your own selves, I think is quite a precious one.
I mean, the kind of work you do in terms of mental health, sometimes is very busy. Sometimes you work odd hours and difficult hours and long hours. Trust you me, I understand that fully. But somewhere in there, you have got control, and take control of that. Because once you do that, it will become a habit. You know, like when you go shopping for your food, or, you know, you brush your teeth, it will become a habit. You don't have to have a lot of time. You know, I would say once a week, at least once a week, make an hour. Maybe when you're off, you know, take some time for yourself. It enriches you. Because if you don't, what tends to happen is you might go and, well, go to the gym if that helps you. That's a kind of thing. But my experience, both here and in Kenya, has been because you're consuming a lot of people's distress and so on. It's really important to actually to find a way of getting rid of that distress, because that's just the nature of what we do. We are handling distress and emotion. So you need to find a way of being able to offload that distress, either through physical exercise, or reflection, or yoga, whatever is good, or just a walk. But whatever you do, commit to it. Make it non-negotiable. I'll make you laugh. You know, I've got roots here when I come to the UK, but when I'm in Kenya, it doesn't matter where I am in Kenya. It really does not matter where I am. Even if it means I've got to run down the side, one side of the road, and come back the other, I will have committed to my commitment, because that's me time. And it's become a habit now. Yeah, so and try and find, if you're running or doing exercise, try and find a place that is hopefully quiet. But if you can't find it quiet, you can find a way of calming your brain by using music. You know, close the windows. If you're in the middle of Nairobi or the middle of Accra, find a little spot and just, you know, have earphones and just use some music as part of your calmness. But please, please look after yourself, because you're not used to anybody if you don't look after yourself. And it will show. It will either show in the kind of the habits you develop. It will begin to show in terms of the restlessness in your life. It will begin to show a sense of absence and anomie and so on. It begins to show things unconsciously. The body has a way of storing stuff, and your body will tell you either in how much you eat, or the kind of habits you get involved in, and so on, whether they are sexual or otherwise. All this, it's important that actually you look after you. That's what I can say. You look after you. Thanks for that comment anyway. It is a challenge, but you can consciously do it.
Thank you, Prof, for those insights. This is Pauline.
Yeah.
Maybe not a question, but a comment.
Fire away.
Thank you. And specifically with respect to the story, the narrative you have given to us, that Priska alluded to earlier. And I think it's really been an eye-opener, and it goes hand in hand with something I was reading yesterday about how if we have negative treatment, that negative treatment from the environment that we are in, especially where we have mental illnesses or disorders, it becomes a chronic stressor, which directly affects how the brain functions, and in turn how the brain communicates to the body. And I think that's my key take home, which is really profound, because when we look at the environment that we exist in, especially within, let's say, like a metropolitan city like Nairobi, we have very different cultures, and we exhibit and treat mentally ill individuals differently. But if I, as Pauline, can become a different component in terms of the ostracization, the stigmatization, and all that, and I become the one constant component, because what I heard from the story you narrated to us is that your mother became the constant, the safe point for the individual, that they knew, if I went here, I don't have the stigma is not there. Somehow their brain recognized that, and recognized that this is a safe place. So even as we engage with schizophrenic clients, or clients who are experiencing MDD, or whatever the case is, but in the therapy room, our role is to be the safe place, and that room to be the safe place for our clients. So that now we can facilitate the reduction of the chronic stress that now is coming from the environment. I think that has been profound for me. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You raised one thing which I kind of want to comment on, and that is, for instance, I just touched on two things: language. So we internalize things, and because we are not conscious of it, the reason why I'm saying look out yourself is because of the following. If you can jot it down, you probably heard this proverb before. I can't remember which part of Africa it comes from, but I find that proverb really helpful. What we take on board from our work is quite stressful, quite distressing sometimes. And the reason why I said what I said is, for instance, be mindful of what you feed your mind with. So there will be all the negativity. There's the political stuff. There is the economic stuff. There is the wars going on. There's everything else. As we feed our mind this, we don't realize it's actually storing this in our subconscious. Okay, so what we feed our mind with is also really important. Sometimes when I decide I'm not going to listen to any news, because it is feeding a negativity and a denigration of humanity and negativity about humanity that it sits with at the back of our subconscious. And part of emptying your mind is actually being careful what you feed your mind with. Also be careful what kind of conversations you have, especially when you're having a hard day at work. Sometimes the conversation can be very negative. You're feeding your mind. So the reason why I say take care of yourself is, I like this phrase, reminds me of this. If you want to write it down, if it helps. If there is no enemy within, the enemy without will not harm you. I repeat that again. If there's no enemy within, the enemy without will not harm you. The enemy within is what you're feeding yourself with, both at the mind level, at your physical level, but also in terms of at your soul level. So it's an inside-out process. The self-care is very much an inside-out process, not an outside-in, because it's about emptying the negativity. So thanks for reminding me of that. And also remember, in terms of language, we are taught to use terms. Sometimes, be conscious about kind of knocking these terms and trying to make them accessible. Try and change your language as well, make it ordinary. You know what it means. You know what psychometric means. You know what an assessment means. You know whatever. But actually, trying to use things like, I'm trying to pick up information from you so I understand what's going on. That's an assessment. Think in terms of so actually, you're going to have a psychological consultation. In terms of you're talking about your mind, something wrong with your mind. This session is about working using skills of how minds work to try and help us understand, how we might help your mind calm down. Use the language of the person. Sometimes it helps kind of take away that power dynamic, because it becomes really easy when we use DD and DD and I don't know, dual diagnosis, or we use language, because that's how we are trained. And in my last kind of 20 years, I've really kind of looked at how I try and normalize that language when I'm working with people. So thank you for reminding me about that as well. Any last ones? You need to go home and have some rest.
Yes. I've been listening to you, Professor, and just thinking of what you said from the beginning, that mental illnesses affect the mind of someone, and when I think of it that way, I think that it is very humbling that God gave us assignments as clinical psychologists to work with people who may not even realize they are sick, because it's not like when someone has a sickness in the leg or in the stomach. This is someone's mind, the actual core of a human being that makes decisions.
Yeah.
So when I think of it that way, and what Priska and Pauline have mentioned on what you had previously said, it kind of touches on some of the things that I have always wondered in terms of social awareness and out there, because having worked in a hospital where I meet clients who have had episodes in the field where they work, for instance, in market, like the local market we have in Nairobi town.
Yeah.
You find clients being brought by police officers who have had episodes as they are working.
Yeah.
And because they are not aware of themselves, maybe they are having psychotic periods or psychotic episodes at the time of work.
Yeah.
And you find that they kind of interfere with other people's work. Maybe they become angry, violent. So you find that some of them have even had issues where they have been put on tires and being burnt. Yet people are not aware that the person was actually sick. So maybe there are police officers around that area. They could save the person and bring them to Mathare.
Yeah.
And you could see this person was actually almost totally burnt. And now there's that social awareness to let people know that it is not always that it is pretentious that these people are acting the way they are while in their workstations or wherever they are, but rather it is out of mental illness. I think social awareness is critical. And for us, just receiving them in the hospital or being part of the process of treatment, I think it's very humbling to be brought someone who is sick and they are entirely depending on you to give them a good life, a manageable life, and to explain to them in a very humbling way that they are unwell. Yeah.
You have mentioned a really important set of people who I think really need basic understanding of mental distress, because sometimes people begin to they might begin to attack the police person, and the police person who's not aware what's happening is they think this person is being criminal. They might begin bashing them. They might they put cuffs on them, and that's it. They're actually dragging somebody into a cell who is actually responding to distress. They don't mean to hurt the police officer, but if they don't understand the language and the behavior, the police is, the policeman or policewoman sees this as somebody who's being violent and is attacking a police officer. And that worries me sometimes. I mean, Nairobi, I think I've said this to Dr. before, Nairobi is a keg waiting to explode in terms of mental health. It does that every day. Think of how many people get out of cars and begin punching each other because the person hasn't given them space to go. It's and that in itself is distressing, even for somebody traveling from A to B in terms of practicing psychiatry. Just the experience of getting through Nairobi is distressful enough as it is. And I don't know how we. I was in Kisii last year, and I began speaking to the divisional police boss, and I said to him, "Look, how do you deal with police distress?" And I'd just been to the police station, and this guy was walking around with the rungu, bouncing it on the door, on the floor, and laughing because he was talking about people who are gathering and they need to be beaten up properly so they obey the law. And I thought, there is one dangerous issue. Because this is a police guy who's going to use that rungu, definitely, because he's got power. He's a person of power, but actually he doesn't realize likely that is his own mental health issue. He may not be clinically unwell, but because of the nature and the environment and the situations where he works in, it is impacting on his emotional and psychological well-being. Maybe we need to put something together for the police, Daktari, when we are in Kenya next time. Maybe through the university might help. Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for the comment.
Thank you, Prof. Let me also make my observation.
Yeah.
As I have listened to you today, the discourse that you've had confirms what I have always felt, that culture is a very, very important aspect of mental health, but yet very, very delicate to balance out.
Yeah.
And as I talk, I am just looking at the pressures of life, as you put them rightly, especially in the city of Nairobi.
Yeah.
And especially if I may narrow it down to the middle class, middle-aged working people.
Yeah.
Who are bombarded with responsibilities, from personal responsibility to familial, societal.
Yeah.
And it is like all around them, they are swamped with the things that in some cases are cultural oriented,
yeah,
and perceived as responsibilities.
Correct.
Like, for example, as an employee and as a big sister, as a niece, there are this number of children, my relatives, that I have to take care of.
Yep.
When such expectations are there, I have not even met my own requirements or my own expectations in my own life. But the society in which I find myself, and which rightly you call the environment, I've got these very huge expectations of who I am and what I should do.
Yeah.
And this is sanctioned by culture.
Yeah.
If I don't do it, then I am not one of them. I am because we are.
Yeah.
So if I don't do what is expected, then I am off. I'm actually out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me as a professional, a clinical psychologist, that is so real in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
and it is a cultural requirement, and it is something admirable because that is what society is all about. I am because we are. So in 1 week, I will contribute in 20 funeral harambes.
Yeah.
Whether I have money or I don't, I'll go to Mshwari, I'll go to Mkopa, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I'll get that 1,000 and drop in each of these harambes.
Yeah. That's what I said about the bad side of culture. That's what I meant.
Now, when it comes to that, I think what it actually means is like culture is directly responsible of my distress.
Yeah, you're spot on.
Interestingly, this very culture is supposed to be a soft landing for me.
Yeah.
Especially when issues become elephant in my life, sweet home becomes the best place to go. So if I don't contribute in these social responsibilities, it means I've cut off from this sweet home. And as a young professional, for example, I am left hanging there in between the cultural expectations and the demands of life, and that desire to belong. And in most cases, the Nairobians, I think we are in a rat race, which is never ending, because we want to comply culturally. We are not able because of circumstances beyond our reach. And often we are caught up gasping for breath, not because we have run so fast, but because we are overwhelmed by what, to me, is like a foundation of cultural demands that surround us and overwhelm us in almost every way.
Yeah.
As a mother, there are these demands. As a worker, there are these demands. As a student in this class of Dr. Yuya, there are these demands.
Yep.
And my employer has these demands. The working environment could be toxic. And it is like all these things. I have to breathe and assume everything is normal because that is expected of me.
I hear you.
That culture, as much as it is smart and helps us to portray ourselves as super beings or good people, I think it is killing most Kenyans.
Yeah.
That is my observation.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. And you know, I'm under no illusion that it's easy. I'll give you a very practical example, really practical in terms of what you said. When I was in Kenya last year, I was there in September to beginning of November, so the end of October. And actually, a person known to a distant family died. And the first thing is, make you laugh. The first thing is people who have got your number, they set up a group, and you get a message saying you're in this group. And now you need to contribute A, B, C, and D, da, 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 da.
And you can be in 20 groups at once.
Oh, yeah. I was in 3, actually, in the space of a week. And then the next one was somebody was having a wedding. And because of the way they decided to have the wedding, they were going to spend an exorbitant amount of money for their wedding. And they put everybody on the group because they wanted that amount of money. And I actually said, I remember phoning the person, and I gently said to them, Paul, what has happened? But I would appreciate, please, if at least, as a matter of courtesy first, just ask before you put me on a list. And then I said, I know it's difficult. I know that's our community wants. I know people need help and so on. But can you let me make that decision whether I can or can't help, or if I'm able or not able to help? That's what I say. That's what I'm asking of you to do that. Now, I was obviously I was challenging the bit. And I said, it's not because I don't appreciate you as a human being. It's not because I don't appreciate like you've got something different. But I think it's really difficult because all these people you're putting on the list, you don't even know what their stresses are. I just opened the conversation, and I said to the guy who was getting married, I said, I know it's your special day, but I think the budget you are asking people to get engaged in is more for show than actually the need for you to get married. Because he made the mistake of sending a list to everybody of what he was planning to do, and things like it was exorbitant amounts, to be honest. It was pretty close to $750,000 for his wedding day. And anyway, in the end, I said to him, sorry, I can't. I'm not able to contribute because I've got commitments which don't allow me to do that. But I said in a way that was respectful and so on. Maybe I was able to say because I was a man, and I can understand sometimes the pressure of being a mom or a mother or a woman in Kenyan society. But sometimes you just have to say it in the most loving and sensitive way. And at the end of the day, you can't control what other people think about you. I know it's easier said than done, but you can't. But there comes a point when you also know your limits, and you know that actually this is going to put you in a bad place. And sometimes you just have got to say, I just cannot do it. And believe you me, I hear you. It is a difficult one, especially when you're involved in helping other people. You're dealing with distressed people, and then there is expectations of you. But there's expectation of you, I've had people say, that's your daughter, the school fees is on you, that's your responsibility. Done. So it is, I acknowledge it's difficult, but I think people in their 40s now are beginning to understand that there are certain components of our cultures that actually do not aid societal cohesion. And I think it's good we start just gently poking on that a little bit in the nicest possible way. It is going to be difficult. And people will say, you don't care about us anymore. No, it's not because I don't care you about it anymore, but actually it is not good for my well-being. But I hear you. You actually described it exactly in terms of what I meant by saying culture sometimes can be an aid or a barrier. But I think there's little ways we can take control of what we have got control over. I mean, I know my sister-in-law was invited to a wedding, and she was struggling trying to find a school, not to a wedding, to a funeral, being expected to contribute money. And, she was struggling as a single mom, making sure that actually the money she had enough money to be able to feed her kids, but at the same time, get school fees for her son. And I just said to her, her name is Jackie. I said to her, Jackie, you just need to say, I just can't do it now. And I supported her through in terms of saying that, I said, Jackie, you have got responsibilities, and I can see it's tearing you apart, but I think it's important for you to say no, because you've also got other responsibilities. And getting into debt isn't going to help you. It's just going to add on to that distress. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate you for saying that.
Thank you. So, Prof, you stop sharing. So, thank you so much, Prof.
Yeah.
What a stretch! I know you weren't even thinking you would be finishing at 8:40.
Well,
Genuine time. That time would be
it's time well invested. I'm happy to do that. Thank you.
right. So thank you so much. Class, I hope this has been productive and even just giving certain information that despite your beginning of your PhD, probably new or trying to make it easy to understand, especially around mental health as it is. I want to hear from other people. Is there something, what is your takeaway today so that we can wind up? I'll steal some of your time because I always give you my time and I don't once in a while. So I'll still, Agnes, what is your takeaway in 30 seconds?
My takeaway was on the use of language and understanding how understanding the client's language could be different from mine so that I'm not interpreting things from my own understanding, but from the understanding of the client. So being diverse in understanding language.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Anne, Anthony, next. Anne, then Anthony. Anthony. Edward, you take away? Okay, Anthony, go ahead.
I really appreciate Prof very much. It was impactful, it was insightful, and Professor, thank you very much. I appreciate on my part.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Edward, and then Elizabeth.
I think my pattern, my take home is as a therapist, you have the technique, the client has the story and the experience. Mind their language.
Yeah.
All right. Wonderful. Elizabeth, and then George and Gloria next.
Thank you, Dr. Ari. I really enjoyed this session, Prof. Thank you so much. I have many takeaways, but if I was to pick one, I'd say it would be looking at the client as a human being, because our training, we're mostly taught to look at it from a clinical lens, but just to see them as a human being is a very important aspect to consider as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. George, then Gloria, and then Ibrahim.
Thank you, Doc, and thank you so much, Prof. That was so enlightening class. My takeaway was on mental health determinants, and I noticed that fashion actually something that I need to look into. Thanks, Prof.
Yeah. It's all about mental health. Fashion is all about mental health and feeling good about oneself.
All right, thank you so much. George, G.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. Thank you so much, Dr. Joe, for coming to our class. I think Dr. Mugucha's reflection is my biggest takeaway. I'm thinking of all our clients who have been hurt by culture. I'm thinking of us as therapists who are also suffering because of culture.
Yeah.
And it has actually challenged me to reflect a bit more. And maybe we can even discuss it in class with you, Dr. Mwaka, about culture as actually a harmful thing. That is my biggest takeaway.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. All right. Well, Jane and Joy.
I thought you said Ibrahim.
Okay, Ibrahim, go ahead. Otherwise, I'll be lookable.
You will make me forget what I was.
Don't forget.
Professor, nice
Before the internet goes.
to listen to your voice, Professor. This is my first time to listen to you. I'm really inspired, and I really have many takeaways. But among them is that the impact of culture on practice. That these are cases where there are many blessings than curses. I think there are few curses and very many blessings. And as a therapist, I need to guard against cultural bias, socioeconomic bias, and of course, the gender bias. God bless you.
Yeah, thank you. That's really important. It's really important because now you know what it is. Be conscious of when you see it coming through as a barrier or a help. That's the skill is go back to your state. So make the unconscious conscious.
Right. Thank you. Jen and
Thank you.
Joy, quickly.
Thank you so much, Prof. That was amazing. I have so many takeaways, but I think what resonated the most was seeing people as human beings and then addressing what is in front of you. If there's an age bias, if there's a gender bias, giving them the choice, using language that they can understand, not showing off with our big words. That really resonated. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Joy, then Martin, of course, Mary, and then Mudhoni.
Well, I'll also say the same. My main takeaway was the rapport with the client and respect, and also looking at the client as a human being first before you look even at the challenges that they do have. Thank you.
All right. That should be Mary, Mudhoni, and then Erika, and then Ene.
Okay, from my end, I think my key takeaway is you cannot give what you do not have. Therefore, self-care, self-care, self-care as you practice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
True. That was for me a very key that how can you give self-care to people? And yourself, you're struggling with stresses. All right? Yes. Rika, Ene?
Harry also mentioned me, and I think Martin was before me.
Okay, go ahead.
Before him or I go first?
Go ahead, go ahead.
I'll follow you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Prof. Joe, and for this class. I think for me, I've had so many takeaways. I have so many notes, but I think the one thing I'll not forget is that I need to see clients as people. People come with their own cultural biases. I have my own, but just to be sensitive as to how that plays out in the therapy room, as well as self-care. As Dr. is saying, sometimes we forget ourselves, but I think it's important to integrate our own self-care even as we encourage our clients to do it, so that we are not telling them theoretical things that ourselves we are not doing as clinicians. Thank you so much for coming to our class today. Thank you.
All right. Rika,
Yeah.
Ene? With
Yeah,
that?
for this
Yes,
Martin.
Doctor. Okay, Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, one of the takeaways, there are many, but one of the takeaways is just that bit of being consciousness in the therapy room or working with clients, that consciousness, at least I'm not operating more on the unconscious side of me. But also what you shared that sometimes, you are aware the dynamics, the age dynamics, all those things. But sometimes just take some action that can neutralize that, like the way you said, what you said to the person you are serving, the old lady there, said something and that neutralized everything. So I'm aware maybe going forward, I'll be looking strategies to do something that can neutralize those dynamics.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Rika, Ene?
Yes, Dr.
Then Nomalanga?
For me, I was very touched with the issue of self-care, because for the moment I'm not feeling too good, and I really feel that it's because I force a lot. I don't take time to take care of myself, but I force myself to take care of others. For me, that was very insightful. And also the cultural barriers. Sometimes in the therapy room, I forget that people are not the same like me.
Yeah.
And I begin to project without knowing. It's after that I realized that, no, I didn't have to do like that. So looking at myself as a therapist, it's very essential for me to take into consideration always my culture and assume it so that I give space to the others. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, yeah. This spoke many things to me, but not being Kenyan, I just suddenly identify so many things I bring into my therapy room. And this just says you need to be a bit more self-aware. You need to be more considerate of the clients and maybe even look at things through their eyes and adjust, your cultural lenses. Thanks so much, Dr. for coming. Thank you. This was amazing.
Danisa, thank you for the compliment, Danisa. And then Pauline, 30 seconds, Priska, 30, Rose, Bruno, Sheila, Victoria, 30 seconds. I'll make sure next week I end earlier so that you can compensate with them.
Thank you, Prof. Joe, for this enlightening evening. For me, I also picked up on self-care. We've been under a lot of pressure, even endeavoring on this PhD. And particularly for myself, I'm always found in a situation where I have just too much going on. I also started this PhD last year when I was very, very pregnant. So I have been postpartum this entire time. So it's just a reminder. My baby turns 1 in 11 days. And it's just a reminder to say there's a lot going on around me, but we've also achieved a lot. And just to be kinder to ourselves as much as we're going through all this pressure, but to remember that taking care of the self also helps for us to be the best clinicians. So that was my takeaway.
And get that husband to be busy too.
Yeah, we call the baby cohort 13 nickname. Is that cohort? So, all right, Pauline, Priska.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mwaka. Thank you, Prof, for the opportunity to learn at your feet. This was such a great moment. My take home is, and I'm stealing this, let me put a disclaimer, I'm stealing this phrase. If there is no enemy within, the enemy without will not harm you. So that one, I'm putting it up somewhere in my office and also somewhere at home that I can be looking at it.
Right,
that is something I remind myself every time. It's really, really important because, everything is clinical work is an inside-out job.
Rose and Bruno.
Thank you. Mine is more of the gospel we preach to our clients, in quotes, what we need to practice, whatever we give to our clients. For example, if we expect them to practice that self-care, we got to do it to ourselves first before we let them to practice the same thing. So we preach the gospel that we really are consuming or we are using. Thank you.
Or you walk, or you do exercise, and you're not sitting on that chair, you've been sitting from morning to evening. How then can it, the way you test a Panadol on you to know that that's the only way you can prescribe a Panadol because it works for you. So yes, self-care, yeah.
Thank you.
Rose and Bruno, and then Sheila and Vicky.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Prof, for the good lesson. For me, the take home is we need to hear what the client is not saying or not expressing. And this needs one to be genuinely present in front of the person. And the other one is just protecting time for self-care and making it non-negotiable. I think I've not been doing that, so this is something that I need to do from now on. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
For me, Prof, is first to appreciate you for bringing out the issue of culture very profoundly. I think I've now seen how culture does interfere or bring the positive aspect when it comes to therapy. And I think Rose have just said what I wanted to say. My takeaway that I need to be genuinely present in therapy for my clients. And I think one thing that has rung into my mind is the need to restructure how I do the structuring during the therapy session, so that I don't see the clinical aspect first, but I first see the clients, the human being. However, I'm just triggered by I'm just asking myself whether culture is one of the reasons why we have not been able to Africanize our assessment tools. I don't know, just looking at it from the other way.
Well, we can have that discussion next time.
Maybe we should have a whole seminar on Africanization of psychometric tools and all that, so that we can have a serious seminar or even a conference. Africanization.
You've got 23 people here. We can actually run. We can actually run something about
testing and intervention of psychological, mental, health and mental. Why not? We can have that debate and ask ourselves, why are we just using what everybody else is using?
Let's make a consortium at Daystar.
You're told if you don't understand the question, just skip. Is that then are we missing part of assessment and diagnosis? I don't know. Yeah. Right. Yes. Who else? Who else?
It's me, Sheila.
Yes, Sheila.
Prof, I don't know. I've just been swallowing everything. Hey, I now don't even know what to say, which is I've just been swallowing. So one of the things that I will say is being mindful of the certain phrases clients use. The cultural nuances, what they use, so that I can pick up what are they actually saying. And of course, the big one, self-care. I can't give what I don't have. I have to have protected time for myself, and it should be non-negotiable. That one. Sometimes you give people, you make people, I've made clients do exercises and they are going to the gyms and everything. And I'm wondering, but by the way, you brought it well, which has helped me wonder. Hey, I've been telling these guys I've been doing gym work and I've been here seated.
Don't beat ourselves. That's how we are trained. We are trained to assess, prescribe. And we forget that actually we need to prescribe ourselves our own medicine sometimes.
I think I'll also learn to, whatever I tell my clients, I should use some of those things.
Yeah. Sheila, even when we're in online class, when Prof gives you a break, he knows the essence of self-care. But most lecturers would not do that. It's important to stand up, because essentially you can't sit even 2 hours without standing up and making a move. But you see, with this even online class, you're still sitting for the last 3 years. Someone has been sitting in the same place, just taking water, drinking. That's not enough.
Yeah.
Did you even walk around? Blood flow and all that. And, that's self-care. Vicky, close us up.
Thank you, Prof. For me, the takeaway is that there's no health without mental health, like you said in the beginning. And we need to ensure that ourselves and the clients are healthy all around, be it either emotionally, physically, psychologically. And also, we need to reconsider our training. Why is it that we emphasize too much on the illness and, we don't consider about the health part of it? So I think they say even for balance in our training, so that even as we teach about the illnesses, mental health illnesses, we also need to teach about how to promote health, and so that there's a balance, that the training is not just about the illness. Thank you.
Thank you, class. So I hope PhD students' learning never ends. I hope you've been able to get a lot from Prof. And we appreciate Prof so much. Thank you, Prof, for coming in and, stretching out your class time of hours. He never asks anything. He just wants to give knowledge and support. But when we have those short courses and training, when it comes in Kenya, why not join and be part of it? And you'll always, find him very resourceful. So I think we need to close the class, and I'll ask Gloria to pray and,
Just two things very quickly. One is here's something you can start practicing tomorrow. Go on your phone, download something called, what's it called? It's the way you work during the day. What's it called? I don't want to keep you any longer than it's called, now they call it Focus Keeper, but it used to be called the, yeah, anyway, it allows you to work for 25 minutes, stop for 5 minutes, 25 minutes, work 4 times, stop for 20 minutes. You can actually do that throughout the day during your work. Believe you me, you'll be amazed how much stuff you can get through in 25 minutes when you're focused. You can start that tomorrow. If I remember the other name, I'll send it to you, but for now, look for Focus Keeper, I think is what they call it at the moment. You can start doing that tomorrow. Work for 25 minutes, stop for 5, 25, stop for 5. After you've done it 4 times, it allows you to, then you go for a 20-minute break. You will be amazed how much you can achieve.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. So I really appreciate all of you. Gloria, close it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Harry. Thank you, Prof. We can pray. Father, we are so grateful for this day. Thank you for this evening. Thank you for bringing our class to a close. We especially thank you for Dr. Mwaka and Professor Joe. Thank you for bringing them to us. Thank you for enabling this meeting. It was by divine intervention. Father, we ask that everything we have learned today will be useful to our lives as individuals, as co-workers with you, as practitioners, that everything we have learned will be useful even as we impact the world in many different ways. As we continue the activities of the evening, be with us, take care of us, bless us, O Lord. And when we meet again next, we won't forget to thank you. For it is in Jesus' name we pray and believe. Amen.
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 Asanteni, thanks for staying
really
here.
holding on. Sorry for this. We shall compensate the next class. Please prepare for your presentations as we start off next week, so that we can have to hear what some of you have been doing in the field. God bless you so much. Prof, thank you so much. Feel free to leave.
You're welcome.